Okay, so I'm working my way through trying to learn logic, and I've narrowed it down to zeroth order logic as kind of being a good starting point. Um, but I'm trying to work my way backwards to explain why that's a good starting point. So this is really just me thinking out loud. Um, because that kind of tends to help me think better, especially with something that's this complicated. And the thing is, I'm trying to make it uncomplicated. Um, but there's a lot of different terms that you need to understand in order to get down to understanding what other people are talking about. I mean, it's one thing to be able to understand it first person, but then being able to explain it to somebody else, that's a lot harder. Um, and it's also, I mean, I'm trying to figure out how I would program this. If I was trying to teach a machine how to do this, or how I would teach a kid how to do this. A lot of times people will use some kind of a learning device, like saying, "All right, here's a rubber duck. Try to explain to the rubber duck what it is that you're trying to code." So that's kind of the similar situation. But recording it, I mean, that seems a little bit more sensible than just talking to an inanimate object, because there's a chance that somebody else will watch this and be able to learn the same things that I'm trying to learn. So here's what I've got so far. I've noticed, and this too, like this audio, maybe someday I could just, well, I wouldn't even have to strip it down to the audio only, but I could post it on, iTunes somehow as a podcast. Um, but if it was audio only, this would actually make more sense what I'm doing, because it is primarily just me staring at a screen. There's not much to see. So, this is what I've written so far. I've noticed that the teaching approach towards epistemology, that is, the study of knowledge, and you're going to get a lot of this, me typing and not talking. Actually, is that how it's described? The theory of knowledge. I've noticed that the teaching approach towards epistemology, and when I'm reading it out loud, I tend to catch stuff like, ways in which it would read better. Like if I were doing a speech. Actually, I should probably back up as long as I'm doing that. Because I was intending to post this onto a philosophy forum, but I realized this is going to take a little longer than just writing a simple post. Hi everyone, this is my first post here. I'll do my best to make it worth your while. I haven't read too many classical works on philosophy. I haven't read too many by I haven't read too many works by classical philosophers. I'm generally an armchair philosopher. Wikipedia is about as deep as I've gotten into studying the specific subtopic of epistemology. I've read more than enough contemporary general philosophy articles and books to get the gist of most subtopics. I've noticed that the teaching approach towards epistemology, which is the study of knowledge, or of the theory of knowledge, tends to be focused in the much higher level field of sociology and human development. People study how the brain works, how the brain matures, how environmental influences affect the brain, and ways people learn, and ways in which people learn. And ways in which people learn. They study linguistic modalities, ways in which we communicate information revolving around the truth or quantifiers of a situation. It's not really the best place to start when trying to build a basis. What is hermeneutics? Why did that word pop into my head? Branch interpretation. Hermeneutics is the theory and methodology of interpretation, especially the interpretation of biblical texts, wisdom, literature, and philosophical texts. Philosophical texts. And ways in which people learn. That really isn't. Right, that's not really the best place to start when trying to build a core basis for the understanding and a for the understanding of and a presuppositional approach towards philosophy in general. It's really trying to figure out the particulars. What is this? What is this thing that I'm describing? Acquisition. Acquisition epistemology is really acquisition epistemology is really trying to figure out the particulars of how the human machine works versus figuring out philosophy as an abstract concept that doesn't necessarily need to correspond to reality. I'm reading, and the thing is, I can read faster than I can talk. If I'm talking, I kind of have to concentrate on that versus about, you know, versus thinking about what I'm reading. Okay, descriptive knowledge, also called declarative knowledge or propositional knowledge, is the type of knowledge that is, by its very nature, expressed in declarative sentences or indicative propositions. This distinguishes descriptive knowledge from what is commonly known as know-how or procedural knowledge, the knowledge of how, and especially how best to perform some task, and knowing of, or knowledge by acquaintance. So the other two are specific things to performing something physical and real versus descriptive knowledge. Which is knowledge of a concept. So descriptive knowledge is a lot broader and would probably be covered under copyright versus procedural knowledge, which we covered under patent law. So, for example, if I wrote a textbook on flowers and said, a daisy has one leaf, versus a patent book about here's how to construct a metal daisy. Take a metal leaf and glue it to a stick. Difference between knowledge and beliefs is as follows. A belief is an internal thought or memory which exists in one's mind. Okay, I'm going to stop you right there. That is gobbledygook because the mind is not a real thing. Yeah, I mean, this is about as accurate as. This is about as accurate a description of reality as the word mind is. And by that I mean it's absurd. The mind is best described as the brain. Look at this. I mean, here we are getting down to like the core issues of stuff, and people can't agree on it. It's so frustrating. When was the last time anybody edited this? Huh. Right. Most people accept that for a belief to be knowledge, it must at least be true and justified. The Gettier, is that how it's pronounced? Gettier or Gettier? The Gettier problem in philosophy is the question of whether there are any other requirements before a belief can be accepted as knowledge. The Gettier problem in the field of epistemology is a landmark philosophical problem with our understanding of knowledge. attributed to American philosopher Edmund Gettier. The Gettier-type counterexamples, called Gettier cases, challenged the long-held justified true belief, or JTB, account of knowledge. On the JTB account, knowledge is equivalent to justified true belief. And if all three conditions, justification, truth, and belief, are met of a given claim, then we have knowledge of that proposition. In his 3-page 1963 paper titled, "Is Justified True Belief Knowledge?" Gettier showed by means of two counterexamples that there were cases where individuals had justified true belief of a claim but still failed to know it. Thus, Gettier claimed to have shown that the JTB account was inadequate if it could not account for all knowledge. The JTB account was first credited to Plato, though Plato argued against this very account of knowledge in the Theaetus. If it was theater, it would, okay. They see, this makes good like online viewing, doesn't it? Like trying to see me stumble through a word. Theaetetus. No, that's a U is pronounced like a long O. Theaetetus. 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 Which means dialogue. The yeah. Titus. The term Gettier problem or Gettier case, or even the adjective Gettiered, is sometimes used to describe any case in which epistemology, or any case in epistemology, that purports to repudiate the JTB account. Responses to Gettier's paper have been numerous. Some have rejected Gettier's examples, while others sought to adjust the JTB account to blunt the force of the counterexamples. Gettier problems have even found their way into experiments, where the intuitive responses of people of varying demographics to Gettier cases have been studied. The question of what constitutes knowledge is as old as philosophy itself. Its earliest instances are found in Plato's dialogues, notably Meno and Theaetetus. Gettier himself was not even the first to raise the problem named after him. The existence is known to have been acknowledged by both Alexius Meinong and Bertrand Russell. The latter discussed in his book Human Knowledge, Its Scope and Limits. Russell's case, called the stopped clock case, goes as follows. Alice sees a clock that reads 2 o'clock and believes that the time is 2 o'clock. It is in fact 2 o'clock. There's a problem, however. Unknown to Alice, the clock she's looking at stopped 12 hours ago. Alice thus has an accidentally true, justified belief. Russell provides an answer of his own to the problem. Edmund Gettier's formulation of the problem was important as it coincided with the rise of the sort of philosophical naturalism promoted by W.V.O. Quine and others, and was used as a justification towards externalist theories or justification for externalist theories. Internalism is the thesis that no fact about the world can provide reasons for action independently of desires or beliefs. Externalism is the thesis that reasons are to be identified with objective features of the world. I still don't understand that. John L. Pollock and Joseph Cruz have stated that the Gettier problem has fundamentally altered the character of contemporary epistemology and has become a central problem of epistemology since it poses a clear barrier to analyzing knowledge. Alvin Plantinga rejects the historical analysis. According to the inherited lore of the epistemological tribe, the JTB, Justified True Belief account, enjoyed the status of epistemological orthodoxy until 1963 when it was shattered by Edmund Gettier. Of course, there's an interesting historical irony here. It isn't easy to find many really explicit statements of a JTB analysis of knowledge prior to Gettier. It is almost as if a distinguished critic created a tradition in the very act of destroying it. Huh? So he knocked down a straw man, and in doing so created the lore that there was a straw man before? Despite this, Plantinga does accept that some philosophers before Gettier have advanced a JTB account of knowledge, specifically C.I. Lewis and A.J. Ayer, not to be confused with C.S. Lewis. He has nothing to do with C.S. Lewis. The JTB account of knowledge is the claim that knowledge can be conceptually analyzed as justified true belief, which is to say that the meaning of sentences such as Smith knows, I'm doing air quotes, can be given with the following set of conditions, which are necessary and sufficient for knowledge to obtain. Subject S knows that proposition P is true if and only if P is true, S believes that P is true, and S is justified in believing that P is true. The account of knowledge is what Gettier subjected to criticism. So it's not the subject and the proposition that Gettier had a problem with. It's the account of knowledge. What, the whole thingy? Yeah, this is really unclear. Gettier's paper used counterexamples, see also thought experiment, to argue that there are cases of beliefs that are both true and justified, therefore satisfying all three conditions for knowledge on the JTB account. But that do not appear to be the case. It does. Oh wait, no. Okay, no, that's right. To argue that there are cases of beliefs that are both true and justified, therefore satisfying all three conditions on the JTB account, but that do not appear to be genuine cases of knowledge. Okay, so this could really just be summed up as saying, oh, it's a misunderstanding, or you're accidentally right about something. Gettier's case is based on two counterexamples to the JTB analysis. Both of them rely on the established claim under JTB that justification is preserved by entailment, and the further claim that such applies significantly or can be applied there coherently to the stipulation attributed to Smith's putative belief. I did not understand that sentence at all. Continuing, ignoring the lack of understanding of that sentence. That is, that if Smith is justified in believing P, and Smith realizes that the truth of P entails the truth of Q, then Smith would also be justified in believing Q. Alright, so in other words, it's two syllogisms that are with the second being dependent on the first. So if I said if A then B and if B then C, and we know that A is true, so that we know that C is true also. Case 1. Suppose that Smith and Jones have applied for a certain jobs, and suppose that Smith has strong evidence for the following conjunctive proposition. Jones is the man who will get the job, and Jones has 10 coins in his pocket. Smith's evidence for D might be that the president of the company assured him that Jones would in the end be selected, and that he, Smith, had counted the coins in Jones' pocket 10 minutes ago. Proposition D entails E, the man who will get the job, has 10 coins in his pocket. Let us suppose that Smith sees the entailment from D to E and accepts E on the grounds of D, for which he has a strong case. In other words, he knows that he has 10 coins in his pocket, and he knows that the man who has 10 coins will get the job. So he's Oh, so Proposition D is a two-part thing. It's conjunctive. It's got two pieces of information. So he knows that Jones has 10 coins in his pocket. But imagine further that unknown to Smith, he himself, not Jones, will get the job. And unknown to Smith, he himself has 10 coins in his pocket. Proposition E is then true, though Proposition D, from which Smith inferred, is false. In our example, then, all of the following are true. I and E is true. Wait. E is true. Smith believes that E is true. And Smith is justified in believing that E is true. But it is equally clear that Smith does not know that E is true. Does not know that. Okay, the emphasis there is on the knowledge itself. For E, all this ends on citation needed. It's true in virtue of the number of coins. Smith does not know how many coins are in Smith's pocket and bases his belief on E on account of the coins in Jones's pocket, whom he falsely believes will be the man who will get the job. So in other words, again, he's accidentally right about something. He's got the right conclusion, but he doesn't have the correct propositions. This is all old stuff. This doesn't seem to be like a separate thing from just like a fallacy. Smith, it is claimed by the hidden interlocutor, has a justified belief that Jones owns a Ford. Smith therefore justifiably concludes by the rule of disjunction introduction that Jones owns a Ford or Brown is in Barcelona, even though Smith has no knowledge whatsoever of the location of Brown. Even though Smith has no. Alright, so in fact, Jones does not own a Ford, but by sheer coincidence, Brown really is in Barcelona. Again, Smith had a belief that what was true and justified, but not knowledge. So in other words, parts of the proposition are correct, but the conclusion is wrong, or the conclusion is correct, but the propositions are wrong. Either way, something can be true, but not actually knowledge. So in other words, for something to be true, it has to be a true syllogism, like a valid syllogism. Alright, I think I get it. What a Gettier problem is. This looks like something from out of home movies, like the TV show. People have used many methods to try to gain knowledge: by participation, by acquisition, by reason and logic, by mathematical proof, by the scientific method, by the trial and error method, by applying an algorithm, by learning from experience, by intuition, getting them from the subconscious. That one, intuition, is probably the most valid one when accompanied by reason and logic. By an argument from authority, which could be from religious, literary, political, philosophical, or scientific authorities. And that's actually what I'm kind of doing here, but that's more to understand the terms. You can independently come up with this stuff, but when you're trying to communicate it to somebody else, you're going to need to know the terms that everybody else is using. By listening to the testimony of witnesses, by that one. Watch Thin Blue Line if you think the eyewitness testimony is actually worth anything. By observing the world in its natural state, seeing how the world operates without performing any experiments. By acquiring knowledge that is embedded in one's language, culture, or traditions. By dialogical inquiry, conversation, see yada yada yada. By some claimed form of enlightenment following a period of meditation. I'm just going to skip that. By some claimed form of divine illumination, yada yada. By direct perception, example, Gibson's theory of vision, Sufi theory of learning. Gibson challenged the idea that the nervous system actively constructs conscious visual perception and instead promoted ecological psychology, in which the mind directly perceives environmental stimuli without additional cognitive construction or processing. Yeah, that's probably true. Our eyes are just mechanical devices. There's really no thinking involved in it in between. Alright, so a priori mixed with reason and logic, mixed with intuition is probably the easiest way to understand, like, the core, like build your core up with which you're basing other things on. Knowledge can be classified upon a priori knowledge, which is obtained without needing to observe the world, and a posteriori or empirical knowledge, which is only obtained after observing the world and interacting with it in some way. Often knowledge is gained by combining or extending other knowledge in various ways. Isaac Newton famously wrote, "If I have seen further, it is by standing on the shoulders of giants." In other words, read books. Inferential knowledge is based on reasoning from facts or from other inferential knowledge, such as theory. What's the difference between reason and logic? Such knowledge may or may not be verifiable by observation or testing. The distinction between factual knowledge and inferential knowledge has been explored by the discipline of general semantics. I don't want to read this article. What? I'm gonna skip this. Okay, this is good. Robert Nozick has offered the following definition of knowledge. The subject knows that proposition is true if and only if the proposition is true, first of all. Subject believes that the proposition is true, which would correspond to reality. And if the proposition were false, then the subject would not believe that the proposition is true. And if the proposition were true, the subject would believe that the proposition is true. So that's knowledge. All right, so the British philosopher Simon Blackburn has criticized this formulation by suggesting that we do not want to accept as knowledge beliefs, which, while they track the truth, as Nozick's account requires, are not held for appropriate reasons. He says that we do not want to award the title of knowing something to someone who is only meeting the conditions through a defect, flaw, or failure, compared with someone else who is not meeting the conditions. Couldn't you just insert, like, a fifth line in there saying that, like, the subject only knows that the proposition is true if obtained by means which prove that the proposition is true. Timothy Williamson has advanced a theory of knowledge, according to which knowledge is not justified true belief plus some extra conditions, but primary. In his book Knowledge and Its Limits, Williamson argues that the concept of knowledge cannot be broken down into a set of other concepts or analysis. It is, instead, sui generis. Sui generis. Generous. I think the accent mark is showing that stress is on the first syllable. Sui generis. Sui generous. Okay, so what does sui generis mean? Generous. Generous. Sui generis is a Latin phrase meaning of its, his, her, or their own kind, in a class by itself, unique. Thus, though knowledge requires justification, truth, and belief, the word knowledge can't be, according to Williamson's theory, accurately regarded as simply shorthand for justified true belief. Alvin Goldman writes in his Causal Theory of Knowing that in order for knowledge to truly exist, there must be a causal chain between the proposition and the belief of that proposition. Regress problem is the problem of providing a complete logical foundation for human knowledge. The traditional way of supporting a rational argument is to appeal to other rational arguments, typically using chains of reason and rules of logic. A classic example that goes back to Aristotle is deducing that Socrates is mortal. We have a logical rule that says all humans are mortal, and an assertion that says Socrates is human. And we deduce that Socrates is mortal. In this example, how do we know that Socrates is human? Presumably, we apply the other rules, such as all born from human females are human, which then leaves open the question, how do we know that all born from humans are human? This is the regress problem. How can we terminate a logical problem with some statement that does not require further justification and can be considered rational and justified? As John Pollock stated, to justify a belief, one must appeal to a further justified belief. This means that one of two things can be the case. Either there are some beliefs that we can be justified for holding without being able to justify them on the basis of any other belief, or else for each justified belief there's an infinite regress of potential justification. What is the nebula theory? Nebular hypothesis, I think is what you mean. That's on this theory, there is no rock bottom of justification. Justification just meanders in and out through our network of beliefs, stopping nowhere. The apparent impossibility of completing an infinite chain of reasoning is thought by some to support skepticism. It is also the impetus of Descartes. How do you pronounce his name? Is it Descartes or Descartes? So the S is silent. Rene Descartes. So it's just Descartes. That's it. Like Daycart. Descartes. Descartes. Blabbity blabbity blabbity. Je pense donc je suis. Descartes was looking for some logical statement that could be true without appeal to other statements. Well, okay, look, the way that you deal with infinite stuff is to use another infinite thing to apply to it. So if you have negative infinity and divide it by another negative infinity, you get positive infinity. Or actually, no, you get 1. Many epistemologists studying justification have attempted to argue for various types of chains of reasoning that can escape the regress problem. I want to stop this at an hour. Okay, it's been an hour. I just want to keep this at an hour. I'm probably just going to read silently for a little while, try to catch up with my brain.